From that cuckold in the Northeast, the land of colonialism and historical reverence, delving into free and intrepid esoteric exploration of everything under the aforementioned umbrella, folks, I welcome you on a journey into the most detailed accounts of experience, evidence, and anecdote. Folks, this is Dark Hour Paranormal, and I am your host this evening, Michael Roser. We have a fantastic show ahead of us, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. We are on a little bit earlier than we normally have gone, which is fine. You will find the differences in time scheduling kind of bouncing back and forth, really working with what the guest can provide in way of their attention and presence, and I am unduly appreciative for all those who do exactly that. Listen, I have a wonderful guest with us this evening. Her name is Dr. Kimberly McGeorge, and this particular person, through her research, extensive knowledge has been uncovered and unfolded. And I'm going to be honest with you, when I received the correspondence to talk to this person, I had a very difficult time kind of whittling down what I felt I wanted to cover this run through. Of course, I would love to have her back on, but we will certainly get to that towards the end. And I think you guys are going to be very impressed with what Kimberly has to share with us. That being said, I've decided to focus tonight on remote viewing. And this is certainly a topic that we have been exploring for quite some time now. People have their own divided opinions on this. I've experimented with team members. Rich Giordano from GoofOn and I have played with this extensively with some very positive and accurate results. You guys are all aware of those who have watched the Montauk documentary, the Montauk Enigma. That I started working with remote viewing some time ago and actually was able to remote view a spot in Montauk with certain effect. I have a lot of questions about this still, and it may be something that we exercise. And the curious thing about these topics at large is that if you're approaching it from an intuitive sense, from the right side of the brain, you can still have an understanding, at least in respect to execution. There is a comprehension behind it, but sometimes, once again, you're left with more questions than answers. And hey, fortunately, we are doing just that, and we will be covering this tonight with Dr. Kimberly McGeorge. And before we do, I'm going to read a short bio about this incredible woman. And again, it's only going to scratch the surface of what she's accomplished thus far. Dr. Kimberly McGeorge is an internationally renowned neuropathic doctor, energy healer, remote viewer, paranormal expert, and consciousness teacher. Her extensive client list includes some of the world's most talented healers, and for the past 25 years, she has worked on thousands of people around the world. Dr. Kimberly was born with the ability to remote view, see people's auras, and was highly intuitive. Might get into that seeing the aura thing just a little bit, because I know that's something that people have been asking about recently. While still in college, she helped police on many occasions. Finding she had a natural affinity with herbs, she worked as an herbalist and went on to create and distribute her own line of herbal organic products internationally. During this time, her personal practice expanded to multiple clinics throughout Columbus, driven by her inner knowing that her healing work could be made much quicker, more affordable, and amplified exponentially using technology. Dr. Kimberly consulted with an esteemed neurosurgeon and realized that the healing frequencies in neuropathy could be applied to all areas of her clients' lives. Her latest groundbreaking program, Frequency Master, teaches how to master frequencies in our own life and train others to be healers to use their own unique and successful methods. Wow. You want to talk about ambition? It's right here tonight with Dr. Kimberly McGeorge, and I cannot wait to introduce you to this fantastic person. In fact, I'm not going to wait any longer. Folks, without further ado, I'd like you to know Dr. Kimberly McGeorge. Kimberly, thank you so much for being here tonight. You're on mute, just to let you know before you say anything.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a little rusty. I haven't done a show in a few weeks. So
nope, that's fine.
That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I very much appreciate that. I again, your repertoire is so extensive that, we understand in certain factions that all of these elements sort of tie in together. And I will certainly talk about that a little bit tonight with you in way of the remote viewing. But, again, Well, let me ask you this. When you got into one aspect of the field, let's say it's healing, did you find that other areas of your work and research were sort of amplified or at least inspired, perhaps in the way of clairaudience, remote viewing, working with the paranormal, anything like that? Did you find there was some sort of cumulative effect to understanding in a deeper way one aspect of the field in correlation to the others?
Yeah, it's really interesting. When people ask me how to activate or turn on their abilities, my first, answer is do it, walk into it, practice it. So with every client, I actually found all my abilities, even abilities I didn't know I had, fine tuning and sharpening, because when we don't use our abilities, we don't have that balance, that frequency bounce. And when we do use our abilities, even if it's just speaking to your family or your kids or your friends or people that you trust or the people you're drinking a beer with at the bar, it doesn't really matter. You get that balance, you get that confirmation. So I think a lot of people we all have abilities, and just like all talents and gifts and, intelligences, we are stronger in some and weaker in others, but we all are psychic, 100%. We all have, well, I guess it's not entirely true, because I know we're not going to get into the subject, but there are empty avatars, so they don't have fire creation. So they aren't necessarily psychic. They don't have the meta abilities. There's also people that are extraordinarily psychic and they have the meta abilities coded into their genes. They're the first, second, third, fourth waves out of consciousness. So they're the older beings that have more highly developed abilities. And so progenitors have, stacked certain people in certain avatars and kind of double and triple stacked abilities. But I know that's not what we're talking about, so I'll be quiet.
No. Listen, I mean, you'll take me down another path entirely. I mean, when you start talking about those type of things, it brings me into another space, and it's just a deepening in way of that comprehension of, what we begin to talk about, because we come back to a very fundamental core principle, and that is frequency. That is vibration. I mean, Tesla himself, knew about this. He tried to express it in certain ways. It wasn't such an overt process back then, although for the time period, he was considered to be incredibly boisterous with this particular truth. Now, when you mentioned that people come in with certain abilities, and perhaps this is in relation to their DNA, how it's been coded because they are coming with a higher vibration. We can talk about the Blu-ray that, people started coming in. I think it might have been the late 70s, early 80s, and you had the Indigo Children, who were still starting to pop up around the late 60s, I think, but really showed some incredible presence through the 80s, 90s, and maybe even into the 2000s. Is it just reliant on that vibration? I mean, I guess there's some correlation between experience in other lives where you're garnering, this type of ability. So maybe one life you're really sitting in silence as some sort of monk or man of knowledge or what have you. Is this something indicative, this type of experience, is this necessary to come into this lifetime with that knowledge, or is it a matter of just being in a higher vibrational state and saying, okay, I'm going to exercise that ability in this lifetime, so I'm going to come in with that element?
It's interesting. I pretty much narrowed down what I believe the keys to beating this game of this reality is. And it's two things. It's remembering who you are. And I mean, in a micro fashion, like, who am I in this avatar? Who am I in this life? To what I've chosen, to my timelines, to my gifts and abilities. And then it's remembering who we are in the macro sense. So who have I been through all time and space? A lot of us existed as individual points of consciousness before we came into the game. The game is only 12,500 to, we don't know the exact age, because on different dimensions in different planets and different places, time is different, and there is no time, when we get to the upper dimensions, and all time is now anyway. Even here, it's just our perception. We're playing the game, so we agree, to come under time. So it's remembering who we are in relation to, we live in an intergalactic, multidimensional, all the way back to the all community, but we're so restricted here. So in order to beat the game, you have to start remembering and connecting to all these other aspects of you, the you that's in clones. We're all cloned. Now, how many clones again? And I'm sure you've heard me say my family is in human, they get a paycheck for doing human cloning and transfer of human consciousness. This is not sci-fi. This has been going on for actually millions of years, but they don't let us know that. They act like it's all new. So I know a lot about cloning and transfer of human consciousness. And so what we don't understand and this has to do with remote viewing actually too, and out of body and bilocating and trilocating. But what we don't understand is if you have a clone, let's say there's a clone out there. Let's say it's just for fun. It's your same age, looks exactly like you to the day. Let's say they made two of you and they split you up and there's one here talking to me and there's one in Europe working for a 3-letter agency. That you, if it has your fragment of a soul in it, is no more or less you than this person here. It's 100% you, and it will come back together. The difference is point of attention. But here's what's so cool about out of body and remote viewing. And as we become more advanced and we learn how to do this, this you with this point of attention can go either, now this is pretty advanced, but you can stand outside that you and watch what that you is doing and report back. And then depending who you know, you could get confirmation on that. But the most advanced thing you could do is this you with this point of attention can go into that you and totally become that point of attention. Now that's where the magic starts to happen. You then are not restricted by the game at all. You can game the game. You can create your life here. You can create your life there. You can start making decisions in multiple dimensions, multiple timelines, multiple locations, and multiple bodies. It gets really fun when you can do that, you know?
All I can say is holy shit. Okay. Because if you, I've heard it explained in certain ways, but when you put it that way, it really puts the implication of how powerful we really are, how expansive and large our energy actually is. People have a very difficult time conceptualizing that we might be just these slivers of consciousness within a body or working within the body, and I use the terminology lightly because it's much more complex than that, but that there are other aspects of ourselves that we can tap into, and many people do this through dreams unconsciously, or even going into deep meditation, not necessarily meaning to pop into another timeline or what have you, but it's not something that people readily accept because it's just not part of the paradigm yet in way of a consensus. But I think we are moving towards that way, and I like that explanation. Now, for yourself, at what age did you realize you were able to remote view, and what circumstances led you to believe what you were experiencing was accurate the way that you would just describe today?
Yeah, so it was kind of a weird experience for me. I didn't, of course, when you're 3 years old, you do not know the term remote viewing necessarily. I certainly didn't grow up in a family that introduced that to me, but I lived outside of Chicago in a suburb of Chicago. And so I lived off a very busy street in a small neighborhood. And so in this neighborhood at night, ambulances and police cars and fire trucks would race down this major, it was actually Roosevelt Road. For some of you who are from Chicago, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And so, we'd hear all these sirens, and immediately I would become terrified, like so anxious, so crazy, trying to shut out the sound of these sirens. And, my parents asked me, like, what was wrong with me? Like, why am I under my bed? Why am I under my pillows? Why am I, covering my ears? I told them it's because of what I saw. And they're like, what do you mean what you see? So what I would see, and this is only from an adult perspective that I believe I was remote viewing, what I would see is accidents with blood and decapitated people and murders and suicides and beatings and robberies and fires. And so what I assume was happening was the sound of that siren, whether it was a fire truck or ambulance or police car, that I was actually going there either with it or ahead. And that was the movie that I was seeing in my mind. And so for some reason, that sound would open a portal and take me there. And I was like standing there live as a 3-year-old, traumatized out of my mind, obviously,
I would very much expect that for anybody to see that type of thing. It's overwhelming and traumatic, but yet, you have someone who's so young, still learning to interpret the world around them. And this is what they're building on. It's absolutely incredible that you can tell this side of the story. While I've got you on the subject of children and psychic abilities, let me ask you a very quick question. There are many people out there familiar with the Montauk Project and allegedly what they were doing with the Montauk boys specifically, but yes, there were girls also involved. But nonetheless, we were talking about kids from the age of, I think, 5, 6, something like that, up till about 15, 17 years old. What are your thoughts on that particular experiment in respect to the cultivation of remote viewing that we understand today?
I was a Montauk girl, and so
Oh, really?
I actually know. I don't know. Some of you know Og Tellas. Og Tellas and I were in Montauk at the same time, and we know each other very well. And we're not going to go into that story, but
Mhm.
not in necessarily good ways. But
I understand. Yep.
nobody in that project knows each other in good ways, just so everybody knows. So the cleaned up government militarized version of what happened there is not what happened there. Most of the Montauk kids, some of it's true. I know you know this about them picking kids off the street. That was cannon fodder. They weren't the kids are picking up off the street. Those were the ones that they were doing surface militarized corporation government experiments on. The real work was being done by the meta ability children, the children that were yellow tagged, the children that they know are star seeds that are super, super old beings, the super soldiers, the ones they've already invested billions of dollars in. We were doing the real work. We weren't playing. We weren't experimenting. They were sending us through. And the ones that didn't have the right DNA were dying, by the hundreds, and so the ones of us that made it are super, super traumatized. And I call it, we're able to tell in our scans, I'm able to tell and look at you, and I can tell if you were part of the Montauk Project. And not everybody is, of course, but a lot of people that are attracted to me, again, by frequency, are going to be people that are involved in the Black projects, are going to be people that are owned by Monarch and were taken at a young age, are going to be the 20, 40, 60, 80 and back people, are going to be being abducted regularly, are going to be the secret space people, because I have that memory and that knowledge. So Montauk is something that is very associated with the corporations and with the secret space program and with military abduction. It's all, you're going to find, a real synchronicity with all those things. And one thing that happened to a lot of children under the age of 3, and it also happened to me, is because they have all this technology they don't tell us about. And of course, CERN's been in the news really big the last couple of days. Crazy, because everybody's like, CERN. I'm like, you guys, stop saying CERN. Makes me want to choke people. I'm like, 500 of them all over the world. Like, what do they mean, CERN? Of course, the government's not going to tell you how many there are and what they really do. But it's just, look at it. Have you guys ever watched Stargate? Have you ever watched Star Trek? Have you ever seen Star Wars? Look at CERN. It's just a Stargate, you guys. Come on. Like, we got to start using our heads here and not listening to what they say. So it's not what they say it is. They already know. They already know about black holes. They already know how to manipulate this reality. They already know how to go back. Half the people you are like smacking to me of like Montauk. Like, I think you were in Montauk. You're smacking to me of being owned by. See, I can tell frequency. You guys wonder how you're psychic. You learn to read resonance and frequency. Each frequency is super specific. There's a specific frequency that someone holds in their field as a memory of being there. And you are like, bam, you're like a Montauk boy,
It's funny, as soon as you popped in and, we connected prior to the show, in my head, I kept hearing Montauk.
Oh, wow.
And I'm working on a second documentary of Montauk. This one is actually focusing on the survivors. So there's a little synchronicity here that we can discuss afterwards. But long story short, yes, I certainly have an energetic tie to Montauk. Number one, Preston Nichols is very close within my soul family. This has been established. And, I can tell you a little bit more about the etheric involvement at another point. Cool. But this is really interesting because it sort of solidifies the idea that people that are involved in these projects, and Montauk is only one of many. It just happened to be an overarching project. It had legs that branched out into sister projects and still, is something that's relevant today. You talk to these folks who are actually the building blocks of what our next reality has become. And they maybe didn't consent to it, but nonetheless, because they have what they have in way of these, what we'll call gifts, psychic activity and so forth, they became the pawns, and yet they were the ones who were actually the founders of this new paradigm that we're moving into. Again, a very significant role. And unfortunately, as tragic as these projects were, because they were so empirical, it was still, God, at least at that point in some people's eyes, a necessary evil in order to move forward or break out of some sort of tethering that we've already created for ourselves within the way that we thought and so forth. Again, we will definitely get into that. And God, I'm going to use every bit of discipline in myself tonight to stay on the remote viewing. Nope. This gets me very excited, and I will talk to you more about that after the fact. All right.
Sure.
So back onto the remote viewing here. Okay, and you may have answered this in some regards, and please, if you have, just let me know. Is remote viewing something that we all have the capability of doing? Is this a latent ability, such as other aspects of our psychic selves, or again, is it something that we can all take up this project and eventually get somewhere with it?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, of course, I say there's two styles of remote viewing. So people are like, how did you learn to remote view? I'm like, I just go there. Like, what do you mean? How do I learn? Like, I just go there. That's how I remote view. But we all know there's the military way that works too, the coordinate way. And you can learn because everything, all dimensions, all frequency, all matter is all fits on the size of the head of a pin. It's all stacked on top of each other. And we are, if you're a fire creation spirit, if you have an eternal spirit, you are the essence of the all. So what can the all not know? What can the all not tap into? Where can the all not go? What can the all not do? Of course, the answer is nothing, 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 nothing. We can see all. I always say to my students when they first come into Secret to Everything, I say, what if you could know anything about anyone, know what your life could look like a year from now, 10 years from now? What if you take this path, what it's going to look like? What if you take this path, what it's going to happen to your daughter's marriage? What's going to happen? Are you going to have grandkids? Are you going to have babies? What sex is your baby going to be? Like anything you want to know, what job are you going to get? How much money are you going to have? Anything you want to know about you or anyone else in the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
What if? And they're like, yeah, I want to know. I'm like, you can. It is easy. Because it's only easy, of course, if you're what we call a real, but if you're a real, number one, you have incredible memory, incredible skill, incredible power. You were the gods and goddesses of this reality. You were worshipped. You were the leaders. You were the Napoleons. You were the kings. You were the queens. You were the bishops. You were the magicians. Like, come on. Like, we have to take back that power and, remember. And at that point, once you start remembering who you are, because our memories are not in our brain, they're not in the avatar. Our memories are nowhere in the avatar. Anybody that tells you they are is a lie. You know where our memories are? In our field. They're associated, they're tethered to our soul. And so what blocks us from remembering the technology they put between our memories and our soul? But guess what? If you can go out of body, guess what you can do? You can look at it from the outside and circumvent the technology. And so
I like that.
They don't think that people are going to learn how to try locate. And that's I consider that part of remote viewing, but maybe it's called something else. But I mean, literally, I can go right now and stand in my daughter's house. I have 4 daughters, stand in all of their houses, and I can tell you exactly what they're doing, and it could be confirmed. And I can still be here talking to you. That's how powerful we are. We can split our point of attention. We can split our aspects. And of course, the military and the corporations, and this, if you're involved with Montauk, have amazing beings and developed people that they've enhanced with drugs. They enhance us with drugs. They enhance our genetics. They enhance us with technology. And they have people that do this very easily. As a matter of fact, and you have one too, I don't know if you know this, all secret space assets have a remote viewer that stands in every single person's home. Sometimes you can see them. They wear dark hooded cloaks and they're really super freaky. And they only, excuse me, I'm going to swear. They only half-ass it. It's not that fascinating to hang out, even in an amazing like us home. It's pretty boring. You hear a lot of dog barking in my house, but they half-ass it. They're not like full attention. But every single person, as soon as I go into someone's house, and if I see a military remote viewer, I'm like, secret space. I don't even have to look or run them or crawl around, because they assign someone, because they don't want us to break programming, because we are so incredibly powerful and lethal. I mean, literally, it's like Firestarter. If you guys ever seen, Stephen King Firestarter, like
I remember that.
Like, we could burn a whole city down. If your programming breaks and you remember who you are and you connect to the fullness of your power, there is nothing. You could blow this whole game up, game over. One person. That's how amazing we are.
Do you think that primarily, from as early as we can remember, we have been programmed in one fashion or another that actually may be reflective of that dip in consciousness. Where we see, that's a yuga cycle, right? So every 26,000 years, you see the rise and fall of consciousness. Again, this isn't arbitrary, but it's definitely an estimate. Do you think that programming has a lot to do with that? That maybe that is the one significant aspect that we need to overcome in order to break out and to see our true selves again, and again shift this paradigm in a different way?
Yeah, programming and deprogramming is absolutely huge, and of course, everything in the game is a program. Law, medicine, education, religion, relationship. Everything. We call it Avalon programming for relationships. Everything is a program here. Everything is designed to make sure that the beings running this reality and fueling the game, which is the fire creation beings, we fuel this game. Without us, if we all woke up and said, you know what, we're gonna build a different game, which is what we talk about, raising consciousness. And I call what you're talking about a reset. So, Atlantis and Lemuria, there was a reset, and the destruction of that. And we started over, they lost a lot of their technology, and we started over, and we rebuilt everything again. And, there's been numerous resets, as you're referring to. Numerous, we had these huge conscious ET, extraterrestrial, interdimensional, intergalactic civilizations, and then they just smashed us down into the game. But that's partly because of the Van Allen belt. They put this technology and the Death Star moon. I love that people believe the moon is real. That's my favorite. You talk about programming. Of course, we've been to the moon. Half of you guys listening to my voice have been to the moon, and you should remember it's a really, really crappy place. Nobody wants to go to the moon. Like when they send super soldiers to the moon, they're like, please send me to Mars, send me anywhere, not to the moon.
That's funny.
It's a crappy place, but yeah, sorry.
That's really curious. No, I mean, I love this. The energy is high here. Coral asks, regarding remote viewing, can you remote view back in time, or is it only right now time? But before you answer that, let me ask the question. I actually prepared for this. Coral, great thought. Something I certainly thought of too. I was going to ask you if you could tell us a little bit about how you use remote viewing to view potential future timelines for oneself, or perhaps even view a timeline that wasn't traversed in the past. Now, what would the significance be to viewing a potential outcome that has already worked out in a different way?
Wow, that's a deep. So one of people's favorite things to discuss, as you know, probably, is the whole who won World War II. So so the actuality in this timeline is that nobody knows, or very few people know, which I'm sure you probably know. Germany, they actually did win in this timeline.
I've heard this.
World War II. However, there's other timelines where they won and it became very dystopian here. So it's not, is it beneficial? It's entertaining. It's interesting because here's again what we don't understand, because we're so linear and we're so tied by time and space. And what we really live in is an eternal, infinite, non-time, non-space, void creation reality, both inside and outside the game. But we're in a very dense game, so we get very confused by that. So why it's interesting is every single potential timeline, and we'll just use World War II as an example, is actually running concurrently right now. It never stopped. So it's very easy for me to look down through thousands of timelines and see, oh, that's interesting. It's just like the choose your own adventure books. You go left, it's the butterfly effect. You go left, you go straight, you go right. You come to a path in the woods. Have you guys ever read those books? Like when I was a kid, I
loved them as a kid.
Yeah, you go right. But that is all butterfly effect. So people always talk about the Mandela effect, being some weird thing where whatever, CERN is making. No. It's actually, they've shifted time, they've stopped time, they've rewound time, they fast forwarded time. And the butterfly effect of those different timelines has altered our reality, literally in stupid ways and big ways that you probably don't see. So it is beneficial because I can tell immediately. My daughters and I have these conversations all the time. We're like, there's a group right now. I'm not going to say the name because they'll come after me tonight, but there's an ET group right now that is rewinding personal timelines every night. So if you ever feel, you guys, like you made like a tremendous breakthrough, or you like dealt with a shadow, or you move forward in a relationship, then you go to bed the next morning and I'm like, they rewound time again. Like you can actually, like you're dealing with the same thing, like the same thing will come up in your relationship. You'll hit the same wall in your job. You'll have the same thing in your bank account. Of course, they memory wipe you, and they're not the only ones memory wiping you. One of my favorite proofs, because I'm all about proof. Michael. Most
Mm-hmm.
people are just like,
Mm-hmm.
believe me. I'm like, don't
Okay.
believe anything I say. Here's one of my favorite proofs. Go on Amazon, order the drug test. You can order urinalysis for like ecstasy, Molly, cocaine, heroin. Order one of those comprehensive drug tests. And if you guys don't use those drugs, especially if you suspect you're being abducted by the military or you're in SSP, pee into the cup first thing, follow instructions. You will be shocked. Do it for a week. You will be on so many drugs. Have you ever woke up and felt like you're drugged and it's all muddy and muddled, like you're hungover and you can't get through the day and it takes you till 3 o'clock to wake up and nothing, happened the day before? Because they have to give us, you should know this from Montauk, they have to give us all these drug cocktails to get us through jump gates, to get us back through wormholes. A lot of the work we do with time travel and stuff, you have to be heavily drugged because they do it sometimes in these bodies,
Yes.
And the bodies are augmented. Our DNA is augmented, but they still have to have drugs or you can die doing some of that stuff.
Well, I find it curious that it might be, in way of your suggestion here, more common to find something like that in your system if you don't partake in a conscious fashion. Maybe this is something that can be quantified moving forward. We can, talk to people and try to do an experiment like this.
I would love that. I would love that.
I think that would be a great idea.
Volunteers, yeah, and do like 30 days. That would be awesome. And like start it. Ooh, it'd be so cool.
Absolutely. I mean, and if it came up as a positive result here in respect to our hypothesis, that would be a different trail to follow down. Today, I struggle to believe that they wouldn't have some sort of way to clear this stuff out of your system, but, maybe they wouldn't go through the effort because,
they want you. Well, they want you to be, okay, so they damage and traumatize you at night, right? And nobody knows it. So nobody's getting rid of the nighttime trauma except my people and me because we know it. But, but they like me to be non-functional till 3 o'clock. I can't do scans. I can't meet with clients. I can't work on my, myself. I can't, I'm just kind of in this, they don't want, the last thing they want is me on the loose. I mean, I'm already caused enough trouble.
Right.
Or they want us dumbed down. They want us drugged. They want us addicted. They want us watching Netflix all the time or playing video games. They want us in that dopamine fix so that they can just use us, and we make no progress. We don't contribute to an increase in the frequency of the collective. We don't upgrade the game. We don't break out of the game. We don't remember who we are. We were deceived in the after death garbage of all the death stuff. And we come back and we play the game again and they keep harvesting, they keep using us, and they keep putting us in the programs over and over. That's what they want.
Again, that does make sense. There is always a cyclical route that is taken when you work with some of these black projects, and again, we could go into that extensively, talking about how that works. I believe me.
Is like black projects. You're like a black project broadcast right here.
Well, you're not wrong about that. That's but again, it all comes back to the realization that many of these things connect, at least in a way, concept, if not even deeper. Which again, digging, we do find is the case. Now, when you look at a remote viewing session, okay, what is the greatest difference between remote viewing a physical object or location versus something within the ethereal or spirit at a particular site? Kind of treading into the paranormal now.
Oh yeah. So I don't know if you guys know Shane Pittman, the Holzer Files. I used to be his psychic medium before he was, I always say I knew Shane before he was famous. Yeah. I was the psychic medium for his group. And I love Shane, by the way. He's a stand-up guy. Him and his family, he's amazing. But he would always call me, and I was remote. We weren't together. I wasn't part of the to get team that went to the locations. He would call me, and he'd be like, "Okay, we're going to this house," and I'd say, "Stop. I'm already getting stuff." He'd say, "Where do we set up?" I'd be like, "Stop. You're going to get a tall, thin man. His name's going to be this. Set up the cameras here. There's a woman here that you can go out back and set up." So he used me and my remote viewing skills to make them have a better experience, and he also used me to help. Then if there were families that were having possession or severe hauntings, I would advise them how to. I just had a little more experience in how to successfully resolve that. Although he had quite a bit of experience too. But so that was completely offsite. I was in Ohio, they were wherever they were. And, I worked with him all the time.
So, in other words, when you're seeing a physical object in a location, there's something there in way of stark reality. Of course, we can corroborate this and say, yes, that object's there. It was pink, this tall, and so forth. But when you're looking at the other side and you're looking, let's say, at a location to bring the awareness to perhaps the activity or entities that are there, that you're coming in way of a paranormal outfit. How does that look differently when you don't really have a concept or an idea of what you're actually looking for? Maybe it's an energetic blob, maybe it's actual shadow being, maybe it's something translucent and tall like a watcher spirit. How does that cognizance really kind of form when you're looking through?
Well, for me, again, all dimensions are on top of each other. So for me, the fourth dimension is like I can see the fourth dimension just as clearly as I can see you. Like I can look out and start picking out beans, or look around my house and see things. Like it's just that clear to me. So because again, I can go out of body and I can literally go. A lot of times I'll look, but sometimes I'll just literally go there. I'll bilocate, trilocate, and I'll go and walk around. And so it's the same thing. I just change my point of attention, project it into that location, that I'm given. And I can do it easily through a picture. I do it all the time. Actually, the guy who just detailed my car, he's like, I think my mama's house is haunted. I'm like, where is it? He's like, an hour away from here. I'm like, well, send me a picture and I'll tell you if it's haunted and who's there, because I'll just look, it's just, but that seems so mystical to people, but I'm telling you, you guys all have the same ability. It's, but there's tenets. So, what I teach, in my groups is purification. So what are you drinking? What are you eating? All our food is poisoned. Our air is poisoned. Our water is poisoned. So how pure is your water? Is your water structured? They've dumbed down our water to a structure of a very slow moving H2O. And so we have to change the structure back to a higher frequency H2O for the higher frequency beings, the fire creation beings. So are you drinking structured water? Are you drinking purified and structured water? How much heavy metals do you have in your system? How much nanotechnology? I mean, I pull chips out of my skin like you wouldn't believe, computer chips all night. I mean, in the shower, like
really?
I pull chips out. Yeah.
What's that look like when you see this in the shower? It's got to be right under the dermis.
Yeah. Have you seen, they're exactly like if you put them under a microscope, and they look exactly like a tiny, tiny, tiny square, like you would pull out of a board, almost like a circuit board. You can actually see the little things, the little paths that they have, the little electrical, I don't know. I'm not that into hardware of computers, but you can see them, and I pull them out, and they're implants, and you can pick them out. I mean, and that's where, a negative ion foot bath, which everybody says doesn't work, absolutely does work. That's where that comes in a lot of handy. After I do a negative ion foot bath, I can pull out. I have a really deep implant in the shoulder I've been working on. I really want to get a knife out, but we're not going to go there yet.
It makes you wonder sometimes, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's there.
Yeah. And everybody, even, empty clone bodies that are walking around, everybody has just so much nanotechnology in them. And that's because the broadcasting towers, when they blink white, you guys, they're not anything to do with cell phones. When the cell phone towers blink white, and you'll see them blink red, and then you'll see them blink white at different times, they're actually broadcasting frequency messages that I used to have an app 20 years ago, and they got rid of this app, shockingly, but used to be able to go and sit by one of those towers, and the app would be like the Ovilus, and it would tell you all the things that was coming off the towers. And I used to have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of these programming towers, and they still do. And so thoughts are frequencies, emotions are frequencies, dreams are frequencies, pictures in your mind are everything's frequency, all the way back to the all. And so they just broadcast certain frequencies with messages like the aliens are coming to kill you, murder each other, hate your mother. Like, it was crazy stuff. It was all negative, stupid.
That's the programming. Yeah,
but they broadcast it for hours at a time. And we're wondering, we're in a good mood, and we go out for a drive, and we're like, oh, I don't like my brother very much. We wonder where we get like some of these weird thoughts. And of course, we have voice to skull with technology, and we have, we all have eye implants. You guys know how to find out if you have eye implants. You go on Amazon, you buy a 99-cent, black light. You go in your bathroom, you shut the door, you shine it in, and you can see your eye implants. Like, I'm all about proof here.
Do you by any chance have pictures or any other evidence that it supports, the chips and, what you'd see for an eye implant? Because you know what, if that's the case, people should certainly know more about this and know how to find out for
I can send
themselves
you. I
if
can
they're,
send you some of
yeah.
that stuff. Yes.
Okay. So
I
the
don't
short
have it
answer
like
is yes.
right here,
No,
like right in my
that's fine.
hand.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I wasn't asking for that. Just if you're saying yes, you do. Okay, I
Yeah.
personally, I'd love to see that. But for all those who are curious in the chat asking similar questions, yes is the answer. She does have evidence of what she's
Oh, and
speaking
here's
about.
another thing you guys can do if you go to the eye doctor. So you go to the eye doctor. If you have, they might have changed it now and made it a little. But have you guys ever had like the puff eye test for glaucoma? I don't know if you have, but you go to the eye doctor and you like put your chin on this thing and they puff into your eye. It's supposed to test for glaucoma. And then they bring up the back of your eye behind you. The technician has the back of your eye brought up on the screen. Well, one time I decided to be super clever. I actually was super clever because I whipped my head around really quick and I looked at the computer. Clear as day. You can see it's like a contact. I didn't have any contact lenses in my eye. It's like a contact lens on your eye. You can even feel it. If you know what an eye, well, of course, I have a medical background, but if you know what an eye is supposed to feel like through your lid and you really feel it, you can actually feel the ridge of these eye implants.
Is this along the iris that
Yes.
you'll find? Okay, okay, that's what I'm picturing here. That's
So you're getting
very, very curious. And again, we wonder how some of these things are implemented and, how to find them within our own bodies. We hear many people talk more often anecdotally about these experiences. And yet when the day ends, it's hard for them to reproduce perhaps what their experience was or bring out any physical evidence that this is the case.
Of course.
Yeah, and again, this is by and large, it's not a very tangible thing to talk about, but at the end of the day, we do look for that. And of course, it sounds like you're scientifically minded as well, and appreciate that avenue.
I'm all about that. I'm all about proof. I'm like, question me. Let's figure out a way to prove it. Like, let's go. Let's get pictures. I'm all about all that.
I very much respect that. That is exactly how I am too. Even though I'll entertain some certain things, I want to see the proof behind it. Now, through projects such as Looking Glass, okay, we are led to believe the CIA worked with remote viewing for an extended period of time, but ultimately abandoned the practice because of certain inaccuracies and for the revelation that one could view another remote viewer, but it wasn't necessarily within a linear fashion. I learned this directly from Joe McMonagle and his story working with the CIA and so forth. Based on your research and experience, have you found anything similar?
I know that I will not remote view the Getty because those remote viewers scare the crap out of me that they have guarding the Getty. So I've encountered a lot of remote viewers that I believe are government military remote viewers that I could describe them down to their toes. I mean, because I can remote view them. It doesn't mean I'm going to go past them to remote view. I mean, I think we all know what's under the Getty, but I'm not going to go, I don't need to. I mean, I have enough problems. I don't need to go looking for problems, but absolutely.
Nothing that causes you trouble.
Wait, what?
You don't have to go into anything that causes you trouble. Believe me, I understand that.
Trouble.
Yes.
I'm trouble. Wait, no, I'm trouble all day long. Once my kids were grown, they knew they were in for it. I just told my class, I just taught a whole bunch of stuff and we were really interfered with. I have Air Force planes, military planes fly over my house. I just did a class on spirit guides and it was crazy. I had helicopters buzzing me. They're insane with me. Like I told my girls, I said, if they weren't doing this to me, I think I was doing something wrong because I'm all about disrupting the game. Let's disrupt it. Let's turn it on its head. Let's beat it. Let's get out of here.
Absolutely. And what you say is, again, what people report who are very much in, and I'm not even going to call it a lifestyle because it's much more than that, this perception, this ability to see things as they really are, and then being boisterous about it. On top of that, if there is some sort of suppression, which we've definitely seen, this peripheral evidence and sometimes straight in front of us, stands to reason is what I want to say, that, we would have all this attention around us. Recently, I spoke to somebody from the government. This was a local government even. As soon as I picked up the phone, I spoke to this individual. The very first time he says, "Oh, you're that dark hour paranormal guy." I said, "How did you know that, if I might ask you?" He goes, "I'm the government. I'm the all-seeing eye." And I said, "I understand. But, I didn't think that the larger government, who I'm sure is already watching, would trickle down to your office." And he said, "Yeah, it does." So, it's curious to get those confirmations once in a while. Now, let me ask you this here. Sorry?
Wait a minute. I have to ask you.
Go ahead.
Sorry. This is the psychic part of me. I just have to go with it. So do you know that you're yellow, that you're what's called yellow tagged, right? Do you know that?
I not by that definition, but I understand the implication and agree with that.
Right. Yeah. When you came in, when you were born, you were immediately yellow tagged, which is a CD. It's a complete do not report for you.
Huh.
So like you go to the doctor and the doctor like finds like an implant in your shoulder and you're like, oh, what'd you find? My shoulder's been hurting me right here. And he's like, oh, nothing, just a little scar tissue. Like they are not allowed. They will be arrested. They will be fined. They will be hounded. Your files, probably half your dental, your medical, your vaccination, all that, it's complete did not report to you. So even if you requested your, freedom of information, that's such a joke.
Yep.
Even if you requested your file, you're yellow tagged. So your file is going to be cleaned up to only what they want you to know. And, yellow tagged is also, if you pay attention, see, I pay attention. I don't know if you guys ever watch Prison Break. So I have one of my superpowers is Michael's ability. I have the ability to see patterns and accumulate large amounts of data and put it into patterns. So just really subtle patterns, like, and he has that ability, of course, on that show, which is interesting because that's a meta ability that a lot of older fire creation beings have. So they were showing us one of these abilities that a lot of us have. But if you notice, a lot of times when I go into the dentist and doctor, their hands will start shaking. So they know, they've been told this is a dangerous person. This is a person you need to be careful of, because if you're a super soldier, you come with a warning. You're a super soldier. I hope you know that, but you come with a warning that you can break programming. So they know what that means. They know that that's a militarized weapon that you could go ballistic on them. So if you watch your doctors and dentists, especially new doctors and dentists, they will act weird around you. And if you observe how they react with other people, when they pick up your file or when they interact with you up close and personal, they will treat you differently.
When they look at your file, do you know what they're seeing in front of them? Especially if they've never known you before, they look down the paperwork. They say, "Oh, wait, there's the indication that this person is X, Y, Z." Is that how it works, or is there some other relaying of information that gets to them?
See, so we think that, and I've worked in the medical field really deeply in the medical field. I worked for the heart transplant team at OSU when I was really, really young. So I got behind the scenes of a lot of the medical stuff too and how it works. But we think doctors, just want to help people and dentists just want to help people. But a lot of them are inadvertently complicit because a lot of the implant materials are in the dental materials, of course. We have a lot of implants in our teeth. And of course, the eye doctors, I mean, how can you have, technicians and eye doctors that see, I'm just going to call them contact lenses, in people's eyes when they didn't give them contact lenses and they're not really on the eye. They're kind of behind anyway, like there is a complicit agreement of silence here. Now, what they're told isn't probably the truth. Right. I'm not saying they're telling them everybody's implanting because we are the all-seeing eye because and what's so funny? Everybody's like, oh, it's just the poor super soldiers. It's just the poor psychics. It's just the poor, reals. No, it's the firemen. It's the people themselves. Everybody in the 3-letter agency, they all have eye implants too. We're all in this game together, you guys. You need to understand the game. You can never beat the game until you understand the extent of what the game really is.
I agree with that. And I'll even say it in a different way. You cannot become your true self, that highest vision of yourself, if you don't understand the game the way that Kimberly affectionately calls it, because honestly, I use the same terminology in many ways. I think this is a grand play. We're all playing a character, and it can be looked at as a game in the same respect. That's why some of these shows that come out are so impactful on our psyche, because it's actually a reflection of what we're doing. And maybe it's a trigger, maybe it's not. It depends on who you are in your respect to your, in respect to your own evolution and what you decided to come down to do in this lifetime. That's always an overarching concept that we keep in mind, is what the totality of the plan is for an individual. So maybe for, I don't know, Joe over here, it's his mission to be more in a spiritual space. So this is what he's going to experience in life. A lot of trials and tribulations dealing with spirituality, getting rid of self-doubt, knowing the self. Then there's another person who decided they want to experience more of the samsara, or the physical end of things. So it's going to, their motivation is going to be money. It's going to be sexual encounters. It's going to be everything that lies within the physical. But they chose, as the soul may be benign in way of experience, to experience that. And on their journey, they will get to where Joe is at some point, but when they're ready. God, this is so fascinating, Kimberly. I'm absolutely on edge here.
Absolutely 100% agree with you, because this is what I say, and it drives my crazy. It drives my students crazy. I say, in the game, everything matters. Nothing matters. Like if I want to play a dark character and go murder 85,000 people, it is a mirrored reality. So there will be some butterfly effect ripples, but I could also leave this, come back in a body and play, a saint. Like you said, this is a game. It truly is a game. As a matter of fact, it is the hottest game in the multiverse right now. There are people in pods paying the equivalent of trillions of dollars to come project their consciousness and get into an avatar in this game. The Palladians, the many of the races, intergalactic.
Who are they paying?
That's a whole nother usually the Galactic Federation, because the Galactic Federation ultimately runs, or the corporations. I'm not sure who owns. Actually, it's a good question. I honestly do not know who owns the computer system. I think it's the Galactic Federation, because they're the ones that put the game into play.
I've heard this. I've certainly heard this. And yet it's
the Draco reptilians, mainly. So there's Lyrians. There's basically the Adamic race, the Lyrian race, and the Draco reptilians. And that's why we see, but it gets really confusing, because then we confuse, like I have a double reptilian bloodline, but I have a cetacean soul. So not as all as it, and some people are double, what I would call Draco, or double reptilian. They have a, double Draco bloodline or single Draco bloodline, and they have a Draco soul, and guess what? Some of the Dracos love consciousness, and they love healing, and they're great healers, and they're very into technology, and they're very smart. So what we've been told about all these races isn't even true.
This, ties in a lot of things that I've learned through my research experiences and listening to others speak, especially when it comes to this planet, especially in this time period. But, it expands across the board that, we are sort of this mixed and matched planet with different souls at different levels, different vibrations, everybody coming into this huge sandbox, right? And I use that terminology intentionally. We have about 10 minutes left in the show. So what I'm going to do at the moment, guys, if you want to ask a question, throw it in capital letters over in the chat, and I will address it. But as we get into that, there's one thing I'm very, very pressed to ask you, Kimberly. I've always been entertained by the notion that we may be able to remote view certain cryptids, but what have you found in exploring this field of inquiry? Can this technique work with other entities such as extraterrestrials as well?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, a lot of things that happen in our lives we're not aware of. So a lot of us wonder why, we're particularly cursed in relationships or in our money, or we can't break through in our career. And when you follow the frequency connections, a lot of us have timeline enemies. We have timeline enemies from before the game. And often these timeline enemies are other races, other beings, even maybe what we call human beings. So a lot of times you can go back into the past and you can have discussions with these beings. And because, again, this sounds crazy, but because, and this is really deep stuff that I don't usually, I barely even teach my students because it's complicated, but because we're the all and we're all powerful, again, I'm going to ask the question, if you are the all, what can the all not do? You can do anything. Right. So that means you can negotiate with a Draco. You can negotiate with a timeline enemy. And if you don't want to negotiate, you can send them wherever you want to. You can set them on fire. You can cut off their head. You can put them in a prison. You can send them to a hell realm. By the way, hell is not one place. Hell is many, many places. And I am well acquainted with the hell realm. So I know that for a fact. Mm-hmm. But I think you might be too. But so just, and here's the key to this game. Here's another key to this game. Everything you can imagine is real. And we don't want to believe that. We're like, that's too easy. So if I want to be a millionaire, I just imagine it. Yes. If I want to destroy my enemies, I just imagine it. Yes. If I want to go to the Bahamas, I just imagine it. 100%. Now, there is some caveats to that. You have to be a certain frequency. Your body, your avatar has to be a certain purification. You can't have a number of discarnates in you. Like a lot of you that are eternal fire creation beings are walking around with a lot of other people sharing your body. So there is some caveat. But the cool thing is we have the technology, and I have the ability, and other people have the ability to help you sort all that out. But once you get to a certain point, your abilities will activate yourself. Your memory will activate yourself. You guys, I don't encourage people to learn from me. I encourage people to connect with their oversoul, to all the aspects of themselves, because you are old. You are your own best teacher. You have all the abilities. You have all the memory of your abilities. And so to me, it's reducing the trauma, because that's what blocks a lot of our memory, is this trauma that they layer. We have daytime trauma. You have a fight with your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, daughter. Mm-hmm. You lose your job. You can't pay your bills. We have all this daytime trauma. And then they stop time. They take whole towns, they take whole cities, they take your house, they take you, they stop time and drop you back in. And they're always pulling you back and forth through time and messing with time all over the whole game. You know, it's a miracle that we can even have a conversation like this. Because
I agree.
We're messed with, you know?
I agree. And that's actually an interesting thought, because I understand right now is the most appropriate time, and we have the least consequence from having this type of conversation, whereas 20 years ago, 30 years ago, forget it. It was a completely different setup. Everything else was much different in way of that organization, and you would have been accosted for saying certain things. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't tread the line, and there are people who know where that line is and what they can and cannot say, but they can imply more than they can say, which again is something that we couldn't do prior to.
We would have been dead 50 years ago. We would have been taken out a long time. You would have been taken. We would have both been taken out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's just the course of that particular avenue. And yes, that's exactly what would have happened. Cashew Gesundheit was curious. Do people have to give a form of consent to be remote viewed? Can we block remote viewers? Now, before you answer that, I will tell you that Joe does not believe that they can be blocked and that they don't need to give consent. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, 100%. Again, it depends on your own connection with your own power, your own belief system, what you believe is real. So if you believe that somebody can block you, somebody can probably block you, but nobody's been able to block me. But I can. Contrary to him, I have the ability to disappear. It's one of my superpowers. If you can disappear, you can block.
I played with cloaking myself. Yep. And it does work, believe it or not.
But depending on the level, very few people could even cloak from me, because I can find that. Like, they're still admitting that signature is just a little weaker. So you can trace, you can just scan and find them. And if I can't find them here, I'll find your clone. Because a lot of people don't even know where their clones are. But I can find their clones through my relatives if I want to, and I can find their clones. So I'll just find their clone. It has the same exact frequency signature, and then I'll connect back and remote view through the back end. So anyway.
See, well, some of the that's perfect. One of the issues here is that when people look at something like remote viewing and ask a fantastic question the way the Cashew just did, we're still thinking in a linear fashion. That's not our fault. It's just the way the mind tends to work. So what we do when we start remote viewing, in my opinion, is we transcend into that all. Okay, so we're in a completely different space wherein you can see the vulnerability of humanity, and to get to that point, there's a certain responsibility that you undertake. There's a certain understanding that what you're doing is impactful to others and that you can make a difference. But once you get to that point, and again, we get back to vibration, being able to sustain this, right? That is really, I think, a big facet that is overlooked when trying to explain this. But again, you're doing such a fantastic job, bringing the intangible down into the world of solidity, with this conversation. I think people are going to get a lot more out of these concepts that they've been thinking about and we've been talking about just by listening to your explanations that you provided. We are unfortunately at the end of the show, and my God, I just want to keep going with you. But listen, here's what I'll do. The first thing I'll ask you to do is just plug yourself real quick. I do have some links down in the description, but tell people where they can find you, if they can contact you, and that's what you'd like. Let them know where we can find you too.
Yeah, so it's really easy. You can write either support@KimberlyMcGeorge.com and you'll get directly to my staff, or you can write, we have a form on secrettoeverything.com, and that'll eventually wind its way to me as well. And my YouTube channel, secrettoeverything.com too. So
absolutely fantastic. Folks, I implore you to check out Kimberly's work and extensive work, at length. She's also the author of certain books. They were dropped in the chat room a little bit earlier as they came up. Thank you very much, Cashew, for doing that research, as you always do, letting people know where they can find some of this information with my guests. Very, very much appreciate that. And of course, Cashew, all your absolutely beautiful words that you always send to me. Thank you. It really touches my heart. I just want to let people know how much support I get from Cashew Gesundheit as a very solid individual and upstanding person in this field that, again, bar none, one of the best. Listen, I'll take you off for just a moment. If you can stick around for a minute, I'll say my proper goodbyes off camera, and we'll go from there. I thank you so much, Kimberly, for taking the time to come on tonight and imparting what you have to us. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's fascinating beyond belief, right? But that's where we're sort of treading these days, going into what we understand to be imaginary is actually reality. in a certain light. And actually now we're anchoring this into our physical experience. So this is a very magical and exciting time to be alive.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you letting me share with you guys.
Thank you so much. I'll see you in just a moment there. Wow. Okay. So a few things went down here that I wasn't expecting. Yes, very, very heavily. I was hearing the word Montauk when I first saw Kimberly face to face. I don't like to jump into certain things. Yes, Montauk is on the mind right now because I'm gearing up for this next documentary. I'm doing a different type of research into it, not as I wouldn't say what I've done before is topical, but I'm going much deeper into this subject, and it's coming from people who were part of that project. Of course, myself, I have my history with that. There are several presentations throughout my channel that you can find talking about my connection to Montauk and, how this is an ongoing exploration and how impactful it is on the people's lives who not only were part of this in one way or another, but those in their lives that are in a peripheral sense, also feel the impact of this, being that it's at our core what we've worked with in this sense. I'm absolutely blown away by this show. I had such a fantastic time and cannot wait, and certainly will invite Kimberly back on. Cannot wait for her to accept that. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that she will. But that being said, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and a very, very, very humble and special thanks to Michelle Freed, my booking agent, and she has been behind the scenes and has done some wonderful work already bringing Kimberly on with us. She will be helping us in the future. God bless her heart for what that's worth. I mean, this woman has already done amazing things with me, and I promise you're going to see more of her effort in our show as time goes on. Thank you so much, Michelle Freed, for all the work that you've done for us so far here at Dark Hour Paranormal. We look forward to working with you as we continue on. Folks, that's it for tonight. I do have another show scheduled for 11 o'clock this evening. I am going to push this out until tomorrow, as long as the guest is okay with that. I have certain varying reasons for doing this tonight. I think it will be a better show if we do this tomorrow or the next available evening that my guest is ready to do. But I will keep you informed. And with that being said, I have a handful of great people that are considering working with us next week. I need to kind of pick and choose how I'm working these around in way of scheduling. That is my biggest challenge right now, is scheduling. And it's not even coming from the guest side most time. It's my schedule that I have to conform to. But we still make it here. We're still active every single week. We're still putting out content. We're still exploring the esoteric realm in every fashion we possibly can. And I want to thank all of you for your continued support and all of the insightful thoughts that you bring to us sitting there listening, whether you're driving your car on the way home, whether you're stealing off into a corner from work, whether you're just kicking back in your easy chair in your living room with a nice cold beer, enjoying what we're talking about, and hopefully expanding your own thoughts. That is really what we're driving at here, to give you something more to think about. And, of course, you don't take anything at face value, right? You take what works for you, what resonates, and you put the rest aside, not necessarily abandoning it, but saying, maybe this isn't time for this yet. Okay. It may come up. Once you understand one step, you take on to the next step and you go into the next and so forth. And that's how you grow. Okay. Thank you so much, folks. We will see you again either tomorrow or next week, depending on what my guest would like to do. But again, I want to thank you for being here, and I look forward to the next broadcast, as I do every time here on Dark Hour Paranormal. Until then, stay explorative, stay inquisitive, and continue to traverse this nebulous field in all its glorious beauty in search of the truth, because we are all doing the exact same thing. And please don't forget, we are all in the same boat, just with different paddles. Until next time, ciao.